You know that moment when everyone in the room thinks nothing happened, but your whole body says, yes, something absolutely did? A smile lasted 1 second too long. A voice got lighter when it should have gotten warmer. Someone looked down before they answered. Nobody reacts. Nobody even seems to notice. But you do. And now your mind has opened a tab it refuses to close. Hours later, while the world has moved on, you're still replaying the scene like there was a hidden message inside it. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. But here's the question that changes everything. What if the problem isn't that you think too much? What if your mind is built to notice more than it can process in the moment? If you've spent your life being called too sensitive, too intense, too observant, or impossible to relax around, you start believing the issue is you. You assume other people got some simple instruction manual for being human, and you miss the day it was handed out. But a deeply aware mind doesn't experience the world as one clean stream. It experiences layers, sound, tone, facial shifts, timing, tension, pattern, atmosphere, possibility. Some of it is useful, some of it is beautiful, some of it is exhausting. And because so much of it happens quietly inside you, people only see the result, the hesitation, the need for space, the silence after a conversation, the sudden withdrawal, the strange accuracy when you sensed something before anyone else admitted it. This isn't a diagnosis. It's not a label you have to wear. It's a way of describing a pattern many people recognize in themselves. A mind that doesn't just pass through the world, but absorbs it. So here are 8 signs your brain may process the world differently, and more importantly, what each one is trying to tell you about how to live with it instead of fighting it. The first sign is that you don't enter spaces casually. You read them. Before you've even taken off your jacket, you're already sensing the emotional weather. Is the room relaxed? Is someone pretending to be fine? Did the conversation change when you walked in? Is there a quiet tension sitting between 2 people who are smiling too hard? Most people walk into a room and ask, "Where do I sit?" You walk in and ask, "What just happened here?" You might not use those words, but your attention is already mapping the place. The chair pulled too far from the table. The person laughing without showing their eyes. The friend who is suddenly extra cheerful, which somehow feels worse than if they looked sad. This can make you seem cautious or distant at first, because part of you is still gathering data while everyone else has started talking. The payoff is that you often understand the real room, not just the visible one. You can tell when a conversation needs softness, when a joke would land badly, when someone is being left out, when silence needs to be protected instead of filled. The problem is that you may treat every room like a test you have to pass. That's the part to notice. Reading the room is a skill. Feeling responsible for fixing the room is where the skill becomes a burden. The clearer takeaway is this. Your sensitivity to atmosphere is real, but it doesn't mean every atmosphere belongs to you. For a lot of people, the world turns itself down after a few minutes. The traffic becomes background. The refrigerator hum disappears. The scratchy tag in a shirt is annoying for a second and then forgotten. For you, not everything fades. Some details stay bright. The overhead light in a waiting room, the perfume of someone 2 seats away, the clatter of plates in a restaurant, the way 2 conversations overlap until neither one feels ignorable. You might still function perfectly well, but it takes effort that other people don't see. You're not just sitting in the cafe. You're sitting in the cafe, tracking the doorbell, the milk steamer, the song through the speaker, the couple arguing quietly behind you, and the chair leg dragging across the floor every time someone moves. By the time you get home, you may not have a dramatic story to tell. Nothing bad happened. You just feel scraped thin. This is where people misunderstand you. They think discomfort has to be loud to be real, but the load can be quiet and still add up. The gift is that you experience detail with unusual richness. You notice the shift in air before rain, the exact color of evening light on a wall, the comforting rhythm of a familiar voice, the tiny changes that make a place feel safe or unsafe. The lesson isn't to shame yourself for needing less input. It's to stop treating constant exposure as proof of strength. A mind that takes in more needs more filters, more pauses, and more permission to step away before overload becomes resentment. After a conversation ends, yours often keeps going. Not because you want it to, not because you enjoy lying awake at 2:07 in the morning reviewing one sentence like it's evidence in a trial. It keeps going because the exchange had layers you couldn't sort fast enough while it was happening. Someone said, "I'm fine," but their tone fell flat. Someone agreed too quickly. Someone paused before answering a simple question. Someone used the right words, but the words didn't match the feeling underneath them. And now your mind is trying to organize the mismatch. This is the part that gets dismissed as overthinking. Sometimes it is. Sometimes your brain fills in blanks with fear because uncertainty feels unbearable. But sometimes you're replaying because you actually caught something real. The hard part is learning the difference between a signal and a spiral. A signal usually becomes clearer when you slow down. One specific thing felt off, and you can name it. A spiral keeps expanding. Suddenly, one awkward pause becomes proof that everyone secretly dislikes you. Those are not the same. Deep processing becomes useful when it leads to clarity, not punishment. So the takeaway isn't, stop replaying everything. That's usually not realistic. The better question is this review giving me information, or is it making me stand trial inside my own head? If it's information, write down the one clean observation. If it's a trial, you don't have to keep arguing your innocence until sunrise. Another sign is that other people's emotional states can arrive inside you before you have time to decide whether you want them there. You sit across from someone who says they're okay, and suddenly your chest feels tight. You walk into the kitchen after two people have stopped arguing, and the room still feels charged. You open a message from a friend, and can tell from 3 short sentences that something is being held back. It can feel like empathy, but it can also feel like invasion, because now you're carrying a mood that didn't start in you. This is where deeply aware people often make a painful mistake. They assume feeling something means they must do something. Someone is disappointed, so you soften yourself. Someone is irritated, so you become careful. Someone is sad, so you start performing warmth even if you're already empty. Over time, that creates a strange kind of emotional labor. You become the person who adjusts first, apologizes early, smooths the edge, lowers the temperature. And because you're good at it, people may never notice the cost. The fresh insight here is that empathy needs a boundary to stay healthy. Without one, it turns into emotional absorption. You can care without merging. You can notice without rescuing. You can say to yourself, "This feeling is in the room, but it may not be mine to carry." That single pause can change the entire experience. It gives your awareness a door instead of turning it into an open window that anyone's weather can blow through. There is a bright side to this kind of mind that doesn't get mentioned enough. When something genuinely captures you, your attention can become incredibly powerful. Not casual interest, not mild curiosity, a full-body click. Suddenly the scattered noise of the world narrows into one clear line. You research one topic and look up 3 hours later with 15 open tabs, notes everywhere, and a cold cup of tea you forgot existed. You start improving a project and see not one fix, but 10 connected possibilities. You hear a piece of music, read a paragraph, build something, solve something, learn something, and the rest of the world temporarily loses its grip. People may only see the final result and call you disciplined, but often it isn't discipline in the traditional sense. It's alignment. Your mind has found a signal strong enough to organize all that awareness around it. This is why meaningless work can feel almost physically hard, while meaningful work can pull extraordinary focus out of you. The downside is that you might judge yourself harshly when you can't access that depth on command. You wonder why you were brilliant yesterday and foggy today. Why you can give 6 hours to something you love but struggle with a 10-minute task that feels pointless. The takeaway is that your focus may be interest-led, not laziness-led. That doesn't mean you only do what you feel like. It means you need better bridges, clearer reasons, smaller starts, visible progress, and recovery after deep work. When your mind goes all in, it spends a lot. Don't mistake the gift for an unlimited battery. You often notice the shape of things before other people can see it. A team says the project is fine, but you can already see the missed handoff that will become a crisis in 3 weeks. A friend insists their relationship is great, but you hear how carefully they avoid one subject. A workplace process looks normal to everyone else, but on your first week you can tell exactly where time is being wasted. You may not always have a neat explanation at first. It can arrive as a feeling, something doesn't line up. Later, the evidence catches up. This can make you look intuitive, but a lot of the time it's not magic, it's attention. You're collecting small signals and letting them form a larger picture. The danger is that seeing the pattern early can make you lonely. People don't always want warnings before they're ready. Sometimes they need the obvious version, the version with consequences, the version nobody can deny. Until then, you may sit with knowledge that feels too early to share and too heavy to ignore. The growth point is learning when to speak, when to document, and when to release. Not every pattern is yours to prevent. In practical terms, this means you can turn vague dread into useful language. Instead of saying, "This is going to fall apart," you might say, "The deadline depends on 3 things we haven't assigned yet." Instead of saying, "Something is wrong with them," you might say, "I noticed they got quiet when that topic came up." Your gift becomes more powerful when you translate it. Pattern recognition without translation can trap you inside your own certainty. Pattern recognition with language can actually help. For you, quiet isn't empty. Quiet is when the world finally stops asking for pieces of you. After a long day of voices, tasks, messages, decisions, lights, movement, and other people's moods, solitude can feel like stepping out of heavy clothing. You close the door. You put the bag down. You don't even turn on the lights right away. For a few seconds, you just stand there and feel your nervous system stop reaching outward. This is not the same as hating people. In fact, many deeply aware people love people intensely. They enjoy real conversation, real connection, real laughter, the kind of honesty that makes time disappear. But shallow contact can drain them quickly because they're still processing it as if it matters. They listen fully. They track tone. They adjust. They remember details. They give presence that looks effortless but isn't. So when they need to disappear afterward, it can confuse others. The important contrast is this. Loneliness feels like being unseen. Solitude feels like being returned to yourself. When you know the difference, you stop accepting every invitation just to prove you're normal. You stop explaining your quiet like a character flaw. You start protecting recovery the way other people protect appointments. That might mean leaving before you're completely depleted. It might mean one quiet evening after a loud one. It might mean fewer conversations that require you to perform enthusiasm you don't have. Quiet is not a failure to participate in life. For a mind like yours, quiet is part of how participation stays possible. Many people who process deeply can trace the feeling back a long way. Childhood, school, family dinners, playgrounds, sleepovers. You notice things other children didn't seem to notice, or at least didn't seem to keep. A teacher's tired smile. The kid who got laughed at and pretended not to care. The unfair rule everyone else accepted because recess was starting. The sudden change in a parent's mood at the dinner table. You didn't always know what to do with those observations. You just carried them. And when adults called you too sensitive or too serious, you learned a quiet lesson. Hide the intensity. Make the face everyone expects. Laugh when the group laughs. Don't ask the question that makes the room uncomfortable. Don't point out the sadness if nobody else is naming it. Over time, that performance can become so automatic that you mistake it for your personality. You become easy to be around by becoming less honest about what you're experiencing. This is one reason deeply aware adults sometimes feel strangely disconnected even when their life looks fine. They don't only need rest, they need permission to stop editing themselves every second. The payoff of understanding this sign is not that you get to declare yourself special and separate from everyone else. It's more grounded than that. You get to look back at the younger version of you and realize they weren't dramatic. They were noticing. They simply didn't have the language, the boundaries, or the power to choose what to do with what they noticed. The final sign is the one that ties the others together. Your exhaustion is not random. It has a pattern. You may feel fine during the event, the meeting, the family visit, the errand, the dinner, the long conversation. You can hold yourself together beautifully when you're needed. You can be charming, useful, calm, present. Then you get home, and suddenly you can't answer a simple message. You can't decide what to eat. You sit on the edge of the bed or at the kitchen table with your coat still on, wondering why a normal day feels like it took something from you. This is the exhaustion nobody talks about because it doesn't always look logical from the outside. You didn't run a marathon. You didn't work a double shift. You just processed too much without a break. Too much noise, too much emotional scanning, too many small decisions, too many adjustments, too much being aware of yourself being perceived. The mistake is waiting until you crash and then calling that your limit. The wiser move is learning your early signals. Maybe you stop forming full sentences. Maybe sounds get sharper. Maybe every request starts feeling like an accusation. Maybe you become cold, Not because you don't care, but because your system is protecting the last bit of energy it has. This is where the practical payoff matters. A deeply processing mind doesn't only need comfort, it needs design. Lower the avoidable noise. Build pauses between demanding things. Choose relationships where you don't have to monitor every breath. Give yourself transitions instead of forcing instant switches. And above all, stop using other people's capacity as the ruler for your own. Their nervous system is not the standard you failed to meet. Your life works better when it's built for the mind you actually have. So here's the bigger picture. These signs are not 8 random quirks. They're connected by one pattern. Your attention stays open longer, wider, and deeper than most people realize. You notice the room before you join it. Your senses keep feeding you detail. Conversations continue inside your head because you heard more than the words. Other people's feelings can move through you before you've separated them from your own. When something matters, you can go astonishingly deep. When something is off, you may see it before anyone has language for it. And when the day is over, quiet doesn't feel like emptiness. It feels like repair. None of this means you're broken. It also doesn't mean you should romanticize the struggle and keep living without boundaries. That's the trap. A gift without protection becomes a drain. Awareness without choice becomes noise. Empathy without limits becomes self-abandonment. The goal is not to become less perceptive. The goal is to become more selective with where your perception goes. You need quiet. You need boundaries. You need people who don't require you to shrink your depth into something more convenient. And you need to stop treating your recovery as weakness. The mind that notices more has to be cared for differently. Once you understand that, the question changes. It stops being, why can't I be like everyone else? And it becomes, how do I build a life where this mind can breathe? Comment with the sign that made you pause. Not the one that sounds most impressive, the one that felt uncomfortably accurate. And if this gave language to something you've carried for years, subscribe. This channel is for minds that notice more than they say.